The glass shattered before anyone could scream. 7-year-old Isabella Moretti collapsed on the marble floor of her Barcelona villa. Her white ballet skirt fanned around her like broken wings. 1 second she was laughing, spinning to music. The next, her body went still. Leonardo Moretti, hotel magnate, billionaire, and father, ran across the room, dropping his phone as he scooped her into his arms. "Isabella, open your eyes, tesoro." Her lips parted weakly. "Papa, everything's spinning." Then she went limp. The sirens cut through the city's calm. Leonardo sat in the ambulance, clutching her hand, his designer suit soaked in fear. At the hospital, a team of doctors surrounded her, speaking in fast Spanish and English. Tests, scans, silence. Finally, the lead physician stepped forward, face pale. "Mr. Moretti, your daughter's liver is failing. It's a rare degenerative condition. There is no cure. She has about 3 months to live. 3 months." The words hollowed him. Leonardo had built an empire out of impossible deals. But this he couldn't buy or negotiate. He stared at the floor as if trying to bargain with fate itself. When he finally returned to the villa, the house that once echoed with laughter now pulsed with machines and whispers. Isabella's room was still the same shade of lilac her late mother had painted before dying in childbirth. The memory struck like lightning. Leonardo picked up a framed photo. Elena, smiling, holding her belly. "I failed you once," he whispered. "I won't fail her too." He called every contact he had. Zurich, New York, Tokyo, offering blank checks for a miracle. Experimental therapies, stem cell research, private flights ready on demand. Every doctor said the same thing. "We can try, but we can't promise." Days blurred into nights. Nurses moved through the villa like ghosts. Isabella, frail but smiling, still asked him to read bedtime stories. "Papa," she whispered, her small fingers brushing his face. "Maybe the stars can fix me." He laughed softly through tears. "Maybe they can, Bella." When she slept, he drank espresso after espresso, pacing the terrace that overlooked the sea. He was known as the man who never lost control, but now his world was spinning out from under him. His sister Sophia arrived from Milan and found him staring at the horizon. "You can't fight death with money, Leo," she said gently. He turned away. "Then I'll fight with everything else." One evening, Isabella begged to dance again. Against orders, he helped her stand. The piano music filled the living room. Her feet moved weakly but gracefully. For a moment, he saw his wife's spirit in her movements. Then Isabella swayed, her legs giving out. He caught her before she hit the ground, her breath shallow, her head resting against his shoulder. Later, as rain swept across the coast, Leonardo stood outside under the storm, soaked to the bone, whispering to no one. "Take everything I own. Just give her time." Inside, the machines beeped steadily beside his sleeping daughter, their rhythm the only proof she was still here. The staff avoided his eyes. The house had turned from palace to prison, each hallway echoing his failure. But destiny was not done with him yet. Somewhere in Barcelona, a woman named Camila Reyes folded her uniform into a small suitcase. She thought she was applying to clean rooms and serve breakfast. She didn't know she was walking into a house where love was dying and where her hands would soon rewrite its fate. When she stepped through those gates, everything Leonardo Moretti believed about power, faith, and miracles would be tested, and nothing in his world would ever be the same again. The villa felt hollow, echoing with the faint hum of medical machines and the sea wind pressing against the glass. Leonardo Moretti sat by his daughter's bedside, his once sharp posture now slumped in defeat. Isabella slept under soft white sheets, her skin pale against the hospital light. Every breath she took sounded borrowed. He had flown her to every top clinic in Europe, Zurich, London, Geneva, throwing money at time, begging it to slow down. Nothing worked. Every specialist said the same. Her liver is deteriorating faster than we hoped. When one doctor mentioned palliative care, Leonardo's temper snapped. "You're telling me to give up," he said. "That's not in my vocabulary." He returned to Barcelona exhausted. The man who once ruled empires now reduced to pacing hallways in silence. Nurses whispered his name like a legend turned ghost. The marble floors reflected a life too bright for the grief it now carried. He couldn't stand to hear his phone ring anymore. It only brought bad news disguised as updates. One night, he stood on the terrace overlooking the Mediterranean. The sky bled orange and purple. For years, he had believed money could fix everything. But the sea, endless and indifferent, made him feel smaller than he ever had. When Isabella coughed weakly behind him, he rushed in, calling for the nurse. The little girl tried to smile. "I'm okay, Papa. I just wanted to see the stars." He forced a grin, though his throat tightened. "You'll see 1,000 more," he lied. A few days later, his sister Sophia arrived from Milan. Her calm voice clashed with his chaos. "Leo, you've done everything a father can," she said softly. "You can't fight death with money." He stared at her, eyes hollow. "Then what do I fight it with?" She had no answer. That evening, the new maid arrived. A quiet woman with warm brown skin and patient eyes named Camilla Reyes. She moved silently through the villa, tidying rooms that no one used anymore. Leonardo barely noticed her. She was part of the background, another uniform in a house full of sorrow. As days passed, Isabella grew weaker. The doctors adjusted her medication, but her smile faded slower than her pulse. Leonardo stopped going to work, stopped answering calls. He lived between coffee cups and sleepless nights, haunted by the image of Elena, his late wife, holding their newborn. Back then, he had promised the baby she would never know pain. Now that promise mocked him. One afternoon, he found a half-finished drawing on Isabella's table. A crooked sun, a tiny girl, and a tall man beside her. Above it, written in shaky letters, were 3 words: "Papa, don't cry." He sank into the chair, the paper trembling in his hand. That night, he sat outside her room as the nurse sang softly in Spanish. From down the hall, he heard another voice, gentle, almost like a prayer. It was Camilla, whispering to herself as she folded laundry. "Please, Lord, give this child rest." Something in her tone stopped him. It wasn't pity. It was faith. The kind he had long forgotten. For a moment, he watched her in silence. A stranger carrying peace in a house built on fear. Later, when the nurses left and the lights dimmed, Camilla tiptoed into Isabella's room. She brushed the girl's hair back and murmured, "Sleep well, Pequeña." Isabella stirred, eyes half open. "You sound like Mama," she whispered. Camilla froze, tears catching in her throat. Then maybe I meant to keep her voice alive. In the hallway, Leonardo closed his eyes, not realizing he'd heard every word. He didn't know yet, but the woman he barely noticed had just spoken the first words of a miracle that money could never buy. Sunlight poured through the villa's wide windows, painting gold over silence. A week had passed since Camilla Reyes had arrived, but it already felt as if she had always been there. She didn't speak much. She moved with quiet purpose, folding sheets, changing flowers, humming softly as she worked. The house, once heavy with grief, now carried a faint echo of warmth. Camilla was 31, born in Santo Domingo, a widow who never spoke of her past. What no document mentioned was the shadow she carried. A little sister named Clara, who had died from the same liver disease now consuming Isabella Moretti. Back then, Camilla was 14, powerless, watching her sister fade in a hospital that had run out of medicine. She left her country years later, swearing she would never relive that pain. Yet here she was again, standing at the edge of another child's suffering. Every morning, she entered Isabella's room with soft footsteps and a small vase of roses. "Good morning, mi estrella," she would whisper. Isabella, pale and thin, always smiled. "Tell me about your country again," she said one morning. Camilla smiled back. "The ocean is warm there, and the stars are so close you can almost touch them." Isabella's eyes lit up. "Then when I'm better, you'll take me to see them?" Camilla hesitated but nodded. "Of course, little one. We'll dance under those stars." Leonardo watched their connection grow and didn't like it. One afternoon, he stood in the doorway, arms crossed, as Camilla braided Isabella's hair. "You're not here to play mother," he said coldly. "She's my daughter." Camilla froze, her hands trembling for only a moment. "I know, sir," she said softly. "But she needs to feel loved, not just cared for." He wanted to fire her right then, but something in her calm gaze stopped him. She wasn't challenging him. She was reminding him of something he had forgotten: how to be gentle. That night, he found himself sitting in Isabella's room longer than usual. She was coloring with weak hands, her voice barely above a whisper. "Papa, will I dance again?" He smiled, forcing strength. "Of course, my little ballerina." She looked at him sadly. "Camilla says the stars dance even when no one sees them. Maybe I'll be like that too." Later, Leonardo stepped out to the balcony. Below, Camilla knelt by the garden roses, trimming the stems carefully. The moonlight brushed her face. He saw exhaustion, but also peace, a kind of grace he hadn't known in years. Days passed. Isabella's body grew weaker, but her spirit didn't fade. She laughed softly at Camilla's stories, clutched her hand during injections, and sometimes drifted to sleep with a faint smile. Camilla sang Spanish lullabies that filled the hallways, and though Leonardo pretended not to listen, he always did. The songs carried something deeper than comfort, faith. One evening, the head nurse approached him quietly. "Mr. Moretti, the child is calmer when the maid's around. It helps." He nodded, though pride knotted his chest. That night, Isabella whispered to Camilla, "Promise you won't leave me, Mama Cami." Camilla's voice trembled. "I promise, sweetheart. I won't leave you." Down the hall, Leonardo sat in the dark, thinking of all the fortunes he had spent chasing miracles. Yet somehow, peace had arrived in his house through a woman who owned nothing. She had changed the rhythm of the air, softened his daughter's fear, and without meaning to, cracked open the walls around his own heart. He didn't know it yet, but this quiet maid carried the power to do what no doctor could: turn despair into hope, and loss into something close to love. The morning of Isabella's 7th birthday arrived under a gray Barcelona sky. The villa had been silent for weeks, but that day, something changed. Balloons lined the staircase, soft piano music drifted through the halls, and for the first time in months, laughter dared to echo again. Leonardo had promised his daughter a celebration, not because he believed she'd recover, but because she had asked for it with the quiet certainty of someone who knew time was running out. "Just one party, Papa," she had whispered. "A real one. With music, cake, and everyone smiling. He had spent a fortune on doctors who failed him, so this time he spent it on joy. The hospital allowed her to return home for the day. Nurses decorated the living room with purple ribbons, her favorite color. The scent of roses filled the air. Isabella wore a lavender dress, her frail frame wrapped in silk. When Camilla entered with a small crown made of paper and glitter, Isabella clapped weakly. "I'm a princess." She laughed, her voice like wind chimes. Leonardo stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching the scene. He couldn't decide whether to smile or cry. Every giggle from his daughter felt like a countdown. Camilla moved through the room with quiet grace, arranging candles, helping the nurses carry trays. When Isabella tried to stand for a photo, Camilla steadied her gently. "Easy, mi Estrella," she murmured. "The world will wait for your dance." Isabella leaned against her, trusting her completely. Guests from Isabella's school arrived, just a few children, escorted by cautious parents. They brought handmade cards, tiny gifts, drawings of suns and stars. The sound of little feet filled the room. For a moment, everything looked normal. The laughter, the music, even the light seemed softer, kinder. But Leonardo knew what this was, a goodbye disguised as a celebration. Camilla led the children in a gentle game, her voice warm and cheerful. "Whoever finds the purple balloon wins." Isabella giggled as the children scrambled around the room. When one girl found it, Isabella clapped, her eyes shining. "That's my favorite color," she said. "It looks like magic." After cake and presents, the guests began to leave. Isabella sat on the couch, crown slightly crooked, frosting on her cheek. "Did you have fun, my love?" Leonardo asked, kneeling beside her. She nodded, the best ever. Her voice grew softer. "Papa, will we do it again next year?" He froze. Camilla, standing behind him, looked down, her hands tightening around a napkin. He forced a smile. "Of course, princess. Every year." That night, when the house grew quiet again, Leonardo found Camilla cleaning the kitchen. "You did well," he said quietly. She was happy. Camilla paused, eyes glistening. Happiness is stronger than medicine sometimes. He wanted to thank her, but pride held his tongue. Later, when he went to check on Isabella, he found her already asleep, crown still on her head. On the nightstand sat the remains of her cake and a small note written in uneven letters. "Thank you, Papa. Thank you, Mama Cami." The sight tore something inside him. He went to the balcony for air, staring into the dark waves below. For months he had prayed for a miracle. Tonight, he realized the miracle had already begun. Quiet, human, unseen. In the soft rhythm of his daughter's breathing, in the maid who carried light into their house of shadows, something was changing. Camilla watched from the hallway, her hands clasped. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But she knew one thing. She had been sent here for a reason, and before the end came, she would make sure this little girl's world was filled with love, no matter the cost. Night settled gently over the Moretti villa, but no one rested. The house still carried the scent of roses and frosting, reminders of a birthday that felt more like a farewell. Isabella slept under soft lamplight, her breathing thin and uneven. In the kitchen, Camilla sat alone, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, eyes fixed on the dark horizon beyond the glass. She couldn't stop thinking about Clara, her little sister from Santo Domingo. 14 years old, full of dreams, gone before her voice could change. Camilla had watched her fade in a hospital that smelled of bleach and hopelessness, powerless to help. That night, When the monitors went silent, she had made a promise to God and to herself. If another child ever needed her, she wouldn't stand by again. Now, in this grand house by the sea, that promise felt alive. Days blurred together. Isabella's energy faded faster than the doctors predicted. Leonardo's desperation grew wild. He spent sleepless nights on the phone, sending money to clinics across continents. He couldn't stand still. Every step, every breath, was a war against time. Camilla moved quietly through the chaos. She stayed by Isabella's side when pain made the girl tremble. She told stories, sang lullabies, whispered prayers. The little girl clung to her voice as if it could hold her together. One afternoon, Isabella's small hand reached for hers. "Mama Cammy," she whispered, "if I go to heaven, will it hurt?" Camilla froze, heart twisting. "No, mi amor. Heaven doesn't hurt. It feels like music." Isabella smiled weakly. "Then promise you'll come with me." Camilla blinked back tears. "I'll always be close, wherever you go." Later that night, Leonardo found her praying by the window. "You really think someone's listening?" he asked, his tone sharp with exhaustion. Camilla met his eyes. "Someone always listens. Even if you don't?" The words cut through his anger, leaving silence behind. He walked away without answering. As the days passed, Isabella stopped eating. Her skin grew pale, her voice thin. Nurses came and went like ghosts. Only Camilla stayed, whispering stories about warm oceans and stars that sang. Leonardo watched from the doorway, unable to cross the threshold. He'd paid for the world's best doctors, but none of them had given his daughter what this maid did: peace. One evening, the head physician called him aside. "Mr. Moretti," he said gently, "it's time to prepare yourself. She's entering her final stage." Leonardo turned away. "No, there's always something else." The doctor lowered his gaze. "Not this time." That night, rain washed against the villa's windows. Isabella's voice trembled. "Mama Cammy," she whispered, "tell me about the stars again." Camilla held her hand tightly. When people we love can't stay, they become stars. They shine so we never feel alone. Isabella smiled faintly. "Then you'll be my star too?" Camilla's voice broke. "Always, mi pequeña." In the hallway, Leonardo leaned against the wall, his face buried in his hands. For the first time in years, he cried, quietly, helplessly. He had spent a lifetime chasing power, but the greatest strength stood just a few steps away, holding his daughter's hand. When the rain finally stopped, silence filled the villa. And in that silence, something shifted. Camilla wasn't just a maid anymore. She was the last thread keeping their world from falling apart. Leonardo didn't know it yet, but she was about to make a choice that would defy logic, break rules, and challenge fate itself. The rain had barely stopped when the question came, the one that would change everything. It was evening, and the villa glowed softly under dim lights. Isabella lay on her bed surrounded by her dolls, her small fingers tracing the stitches on a stuffed bear. Camilla sat beside her, humming a lullaby in Spanish, her voice a gentle rhythm that steadied the child's breathing. The machines beeped quietly. For a moment, the house seemed at peace. Then Isabella turned her head, her voice so faint it barely carried. "Mama Cammy," she whispered, "am I going to live?" The question froze the air. The hum of the monitor, the rain dripping from the gutters, even the sound of the sea, all vanished into silence. Camilla felt her heart stop. She tried to speak, but no words came. Isabella's wide eyes searched hers, desperate for truth, not comfort. Camilla's throat tightened. She wanted to lie, to smile, to promise the impossible. But the weight of honesty pressed harder. Finally, she reached for the little girl's hand. "You're very brave," she whispered, "and I'm right here with you." Isabella studied her face for a long moment. "That's not a yes," she said softly. Camilla couldn't answer. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent, uninvited. She bent forward and kissed Isabella's forehead. "Sleep now, mi estrella. We'll talk again tomorrow." The little girl nodded, closing her eyes as the monitor beeped steadily beside her. Behind them, near the doorway, Leonardo stood frozen. He had heard it all, the question, the silence, the truth. His jaw clenched as he turned away, unable to breathe. He walked down the hall, past portraits of his ancestors, their painted smiles mocking him. For years, he had believed control was love. But control couldn't hold a dying child. He found himself in his study, the rain tapping against the window again. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, tired, hollow, desperate. He poured himself a drink, then set it aside untouched. When the tears came, they weren't loud. They were quiet, almost ashamed. In Isabella's room, Camilla remained seated. She didn't move for a long time. The question echoed inside her like a bell she couldn't silence. Am I going to live? She had answered it with presence, not promise. But that wasn't enough. Her heart ached with a single thought. There had to be something more she could do. That night, the storm rolled back in from the sea. Leonardo paced the hallway, unable to sleep. At one point, he stopped outside his daughter's door, his hand resting on the knob. He wanted to go in, to hold her, to say something, anything. But when he looked through the small crack and saw Camilla sitting there, humming again, his hand fell to his side. For the first time, he understood that she was giving his daughter what he could not. Hours passed before dawn. The sky lightened, gray and soft. In the quiet kitchen, Camilla sat at the table, staring at her folded hands. Every part of her screamed to act, to fight, to find a miracle. She didn't know how, but she knew she couldn't watch another child die while she did nothing. In the next room, Leonardo stood by the window, the first sunlight spilling across his face. He didn't know yet that while he was breaking apart, someone else in his house had already begun to rebuild what he couldn't. Because somewhere deep inside, that maid with the steady hands and haunted eyes, a plan was forming. One that would test every rule, every law, and every boundary between what love is allowed to do and what love dares to risk. By dawn, Camilla had made her choice. Sleep never came. Only the steady beat of rain against the kitchen windows and the echo of Isabella's question haunted her. Am I going to live? Those words looped in her mind until they became a command. She couldn't accept doing nothing. When the rest of the house still slept, Camilla opened her old laptop on the kitchen table. Its screen flickered weakly as she searched for answers. Liver transplant options for children, living donor compatibility, experimental cases. She clicked link after link, reading stories from families around the world. Some ended in tragedy, others in miracles. She prayed for one of the latter. Then she saw a paragraph that made her heart stop. In rare cases, a portion of a healthy adult liver can be transplanted to a child if compatibility markers match. She read it again, slower this time, her hands trembling. Could it be that simple and that impossible? By noon, she had found a clinic in the city that offered compatibility testing. Without telling anyone, she called and made an appointment. It's for someone very important, she said quietly. I just need to know if I could help. The next morning, while Leonardo met with doctors upstairs, Camilla slipped out wearing her plain coat. She took the metro across town, clutching a folder of her identification papers. At the clinic, a nurse drew her blood, asked questions, and told her results would come in 2 days. Camilla walked back through the rain, her heart pounding with both fear and hope. 2 days felt like years. She went about her duties as usual, folding linens, preparing tea, helping Isabella with her drawings. But her mind was elsewhere. Every time her phone buzzed, her chest tightened. On the 3rd morning, an email arrived. Please return to the clinic for your results. She almost dropped the phone. After breakfast, she told Leonardo she needed a day off for personal reasons. He barely looked up, lost in medical paperwork. Fine, he said absently. Be back tomorrow. At the clinic, the same nurse greeted her with a faint smile and handed her a sealed envelope. Camilla's fingers shook as she tore it open. Numbers, codes, blood types, none of it made sense until the doctor entered the room. Miss Reyes, he said gently, you're a full match. Your liver is compatible with the child's. The words hit her like a miracle and a storm all at once. A perfect match, despite no blood relation, no shared heritage. The doctor continued. It's extremely rare. You could be her donor, but you'll need authorization from the family and the hospital board. Camilla barely heard the rest. Her mind flashed with Isabella's face, her voice, her laughter. She whispered, then that's what I'll do. When she returned to the villa, she hid the envelope in a drawer and went straight to Isabella's room. The girl was sketching stars with shaky hands. Look, Mama Cammy, she said proudly. They're dancing. Camilla smiled through the tears she couldn't explain. That night, she stood by her window, holding the papers close. She knew Leonardo would never approve. He saw her as staff, not family. But rules didn't matter anymore. This wasn't about permission. It was about love, and promises made long ago beside another dying sister. As the city slept, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. Camilla whispered into the darkness. You're not leaving this world, Pequeña. Not like Clara. I won't let you. And for the first time since she'd entered the Moretti mansion, she felt no fear, only purpose. The kind that turns ordinary people into something extraordinary. The kind that changes destinies forever. The morning light crept slowly into the villa, soft and gray. Camilla hadn't slept. The words full donor compatibility pulsed in her mind like a heartbeat. She had the answer in her hands, the key to saving Isabella, but no one would listen. She knew Leonardo wouldn't allow it. He would see it as madness, not mercy. Still, she couldn't unsee those numbers. She couldn't unhear Isabella's voice asking, am I going to live? By the time the house stirred awake, her decision was made. She slipped the test results into her bag and took the first train into the city. At Hospital Del Mar, she asked for the transplant director. They led her into a sterile white office overlooking the sea. She placed the envelope on the desk. I'm here about a little girl named Isabella Moretti. I'm a full match. I want to donate. The doctor frowned. You're not family? No, she said quietly. But she's my child in every way that matters. He sighed. I'm sorry. The law doesn't allow living donations without legal or blood relation. It's meant to protect you both. Camilla's voice cracked. She'll die if no one acts. How is that protection? I wish I could help, he said gently. But my hands are tied. She left with the sound of the sea crashing behind her. Rain began to fall, sharp and cold, soaking through her coat. She walked aimlessly through the city, heart pounding with anger and helplessness. Somewhere, she thought, there had to be a way. That night, Leonardo found her in the kitchen, staring at nothing. "You were gone all day," he said. "Where?" Camilla hesitated, then met his eyes. "I got tested. My liver matches Isabella's. I can save her." The words hung between them like thunder. "What?" he whispered. "I can donate. Please, let me try." For a heartbeat, he said nothing. Then his voice rose, raw and terrified. "No. Do you understand what you're saying? You could die. And if you do..." He stopped himself, chest heaving. "You're all she has left." Camilla stepped closer. "She has you. She'll always have you." His voice hardened. "You're not her mother." Her answer came soft but steady. "Maybe not by blood, but love is thicker than that." Leonardo turned away, fists clenched. "You think I haven't tried everything? Money, science, prayer, I've done it all. And now you want to gamble with your life?" "I'm not gambling," she said. "I'm choosing." He looked at her, and for the first time, fear outweighed pride. "Please don't." Camilla's eyes filled but didn't waver. "You can stop me from working here, but you can't stop me from loving her." That night, while the storm gathered again, she packed a small bag, her passport, the test papers, a rosary, and a photo of Isabella in her paper crown. She called a number she'd found online. Dr. Salim, a surgeon in Lisbon known for taking impossible cases. "I'm a donor," she said softly. "The family won't approve, but the child is dying." His voice was calm. "It's dangerous. You could lose your life." Camilla stared out at the Black Sea. "Then I'll lose it for a reason." By sunrise, her room was empty. On the nightstand lay a folded note. "Tell Isabella that Mama said yes." When Leonardo found it, hours later, the paper trembled in his hand. He didn't know where she had gone, but he knew one thing with absolute clarity. The woman he had once dismissed as ordinary was now doing something extraordinary, risking everything for the child he couldn't save. The private plane touched down in Lisbon under a curtain of rain. Camilla pressed her forehead to the window, watching the wipers blur the city lights into streaks of gold. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to do. Beside her sat a nurse from the hospital's secret donor program, silent and alert. "Once we arrive," the nurse said, "Dr. Salim will handle everything. You'll both go into surgery within hours." Camilla nodded, clutching the photo of Isabella she carried in her pocket. Back in Barcelona, Leonardo Moretti was pacing the hospital corridors when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, international. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Moretti," a calm voice said. "This is Dr. Salim from Lisbon. Your daughter's here. She's in surgery." The words hit him like lightning. "What? Surgery? Who authorized? The donor is already prepped. You should come immediately." Leonardo's heart pounded. Who was the donor? There was a pause. A woman named Camilla Reyes. The phone nearly slipped from his hand. For a moment, he couldn't speak. She took my daughter. She brought her to us to save her life," the doctor said simply. Within minutes, Leonardo was on a jet bound for Lisbon, rage and terror battling inside him. He couldn't decide whether to curse her or thank her. Every mile felt like an eternity. Meanwhile, in the sterile light of the operating room, Camilla lay still beneath the mask of anesthesia. Monitors beeped steadily. Dr. Salim stood beside her, eyes sharp behind his glasses. "Begin extraction," he said. Across the hall, Isabella was being prepared by another team. 2 rooms, 2 heartbeats. one desperate hope. Hours passed. Outside the surgical wing, the rain hammered against the windows like a warning. Nurses moved quickly, their voices hushed. When Dr. Salim finally emerged, his gown streaked with fatigue, he gave a slow nod. The transplant was successful, he told the team. Now, we wait. Leonardo arrived just before dawn, his clothes still wrinkled from the flight. He ran through the corridors until he found the intensive care unit. Through the glass, he saw them. 2 beds side by side, 2 bodies pale but alive. Isabella's small hand wrapped in gauze, Camilla motionless beneath white sheets. For a long time, he couldn't move. When a nurse approached, he asked quietly, "They'll live?" "Recovery will be hard," she said. "But the signs are good. The child's body has accepted the liver." Leonardo pressed his hand to the glass, tears cutting through exhaustion. "She did it," he whispered. Later, he sat between their beds, one hand holding Isabella's, the other resting near Camilla's. "You foolish, brave woman," he murmured. "You broke every rule, and you might have just saved us all." Hours turned into days. Isabella's color began to return, her cheeks warm again, her pulse steady. The doctors called it a medical miracle. Camilla, however, remained unconscious, her body weak from the operation. Leonardo barely left her side. Every night, he read to Isabella, and every morning, he spoke softly to the woman who had risked everything. When Isabella finally opened her eyes, her first words were barely a whisper. "Papa?" He smiled through tears. "I'm here, my love." Her eyes darted to the next bed. "Mama Cammy?" Leonardo swallowed hard. "She's resting, sweetheart. She saved you." The little girl's eyes filled with tears. "Can I hold her hand?" He nodded, lifting her frail arm toward Camilla's still fingers. The child's touch lingered like a prayer. And for the first time in months, Leonardo didn't feel helpless. He felt human again, because love, not money, had saved his daughter's life. And it came from the one person he had never thought to believe in. News of the operation spread faster than anyone expected. Within days, the story leaked from the Lisbon hospital staff to local reporters. Maid donates liver to billionaire's daughter. The headlines read. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. Morning shows, online news, radio talk segments. People called it the miracle of Lisbon. Leonardo tried to stop it, but the story had already escaped him. The world wanted a symbol, not the truth. They didn't see the sleepless nights, the blood loss, the silent prayers. They only saw a headline about a poor woman saving a rich man's child. Cameras crowded the hospital gates. Journalists begged for interviews. Leonardo refused them all. Inside, his world had narrowed to 2 rooms. Isabella's recovery was slow but steady. Each day, her smile returned a little more. She could sit up now, draw again, even laugh softly when her father told clumsy jokes. But her first question every morning never changed. Is Mama Cammy awake yet? Camilla, meanwhile, lay in a coma, her skin pale, her breathing shallow, but stable. The doctor said her body was healing, but the process would take time. Her liver is regenerating, Dr. Salim explained. She's strong. We must wait. Leonardo sat beside her, the woman he once called just a maid, now the reason his daughter was alive. Every night, he read aloud to both of them. Sometimes fairy tales, sometimes letters from people around the world who had written after hearing the story, parents of sick children, doctors inspired by her act, strangers simply saying thank you. He didn't read the praise for himself. He read it for her. When Dr. Salim visited one evening, He placed a hand on Leonardo's shoulder. "You understand," he said quietly. "She broke every rule to save your child. If this had gone wrong, she could have died, and I could have lost my license." But she didn't hesitate once. Leonardo nodded, his voice rough. "She did what I couldn't. She believed." Outside the hospital, the world was changing. Activists and doctors debated whether the laws restricting non-family donations were outdated. Health organizations cited Camilla's act as a case for reform. A government committee opened an inquiry into transplant policies. For once, bureaucracy was forced to look at compassion. Inside Isabella's room, the little girl's drawings covered the walls. Crude crayon pictures of two women holding hands beneath a yellow sun. When nurses asked who they were, she said, "My two moms, one in heaven, one still sleeping." One afternoon, as Leonardo helped her draw, a nurse rushed in. "Mr. Moretti," she said breathlessly, "you should come." He hurried to the next room. Camilla's fingers twitched, her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then clearer. Dr. Salim smiled. "Welcome back, Senora Reyes." Leonardo stood frozen, his throat tight. "Camilla," he whispered. Her lips parted weakly. "Is she okay?" "She's alive," he said, voice breaking. "Because of you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Gracias a Dios." He reached for her hand and held it firmly. "Rest now. You've done enough." Later, when Isabella entered the room with her paper crown, Camilla's weak smile grew. "Mama Cami," the child said joyfully. "You woke up." She pressed her tiny hand to Camilla's cheek. "You kept your promise." Camilla's eyes filled with tears. "I told you the stars would sing again." In that quiet room, something greater than recovery bloomed. It wasn't just life returning. It was faith, reborn in every heartbeat, every breath. Leonardo looked at them, the woman who had risked her life, the child who had fought for hers, and finally understood that love, not wealth, was the only true inheritance he could give. A full year passed before the Moretti villa knew laughter again. The house that had once felt like a mausoleum now breathed with life. The scent of jasmine drifted through open windows, replacing the sterile odor of medicine. In the garden, Isabella ran barefoot across the grass, her golden hair bouncing in the sunlight. She was 8 now, healthy, curious, full of questions. Her scars had faded, but they remained as quiet reminders of what love had cost. Camilla watched from the terrace, her hands resting lightly on the railing. Her body had healed slower than Isabella's. The surgery left her weaker, but she never complained. She wore her strength quietly, like a second skin. Each morning, she prepared breakfast with the same patience she'd always had, humming to herself as the sunlight spilled across the marble floor. Leonardo often joined her there now. The man who once measured life in profits and contracts had learned to measure it in moments. He worked less, laughed more. Some days, he walked with Isabella to school, her tiny hand gripping his. Other days, he helped Camilla plant flowers in the garden, both of them working in companionable silence. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the World Health Foundation. They invited Camilla to Geneva to receive a humanitarian award. The letter praised her courage, her selflessness, her impact on global transplant policy. Leonardo handed it to her at the breakfast table, smiling. "You deserve this," he said. Camilla read the letter, then folded it carefully. "I didn't do it for medals," she said softly. "I did it for her." She looked toward the garden, where Isabella was feeding birds near the fountain. Leonardo nodded. "I know. but the world should still know your name. The world already knows hers, she said with a smile. That's enough. Later that evening, the three of them sat on the beach behind the villa. The Mediterranean shimmered under the fading sun. Isabella built castles out of wet sand, while Camilla and Leonardo watched, their silence full of understanding. You two are quiet, Isabella said suddenly. Are you sad? Camilla laughed gently. No, mi amor. We're watching you live. Isabella grinned. Then I'll make the biggest castle so you both can live in it forever. Leonardo's chest tightened. He turned to Camilla. She's growing fast, he murmured. She had to, Camilla replied. Children who face death early learn to live quicker. He studied her face, the kindness in her eyes, the calm strength that had once terrified him because it mirrored everything he lacked. You changed us, he said quietly. Camilla shook her head. No, love did. As twilight deepened, they walked back to the villa hand in hand. Three people bound not by blood, but by choice. Inside, Isabella ran upstairs, leaving a trail of sand and laughter. Leonardo lingered by the door. I keep thinking about that night in Lisbon, he said. I thought I'd lost everything. But I didn't know she'd already saved it. Camilla's voice was soft. Sometimes we have to lose control to find faith again. He looked at her for a long moment, the sea wind carrying her words through the open door. You were never just the maid, he said. You were the miracle. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both pride and humility. Maybe we all were. Upstairs, Isabella called out, Papa, Mama Cammy, come see my drawing. They climbed the steps together, laughter echoing behind them. On the wall of the girls' room hung a picture of three stick figures, holding hands beneath a giant yellow sun. Above it, written in careful letters, were 4 words: Our family of miracles. The afternoon sun washed the Moretti villa in warm gold. Laughter drifted through the open windows, blending with the scent of pastries and salt from the sea. It was Isabella's 8th birthday, her first one without hospitals, tubes, or fear. The house, once silent with grief, now pulsed with life. Purple and yellow balloons swayed above the dining table where a cake waited, 8 bright candles flickering. Isabella twirled in a yellow dress, her curls bouncing as she grinned. Papa, you have to sing this time. Leonardo stood behind the camera, pretending to groan. I don't sing, Princessa. She giggled. Then fake it. His laughter joined hers, full and unrestrained, the sound of a man who had learned what really mattered. Camilla entered quietly, carrying lemonade and wearing her familiar blue blouse and jeans. A faint scar traced her side, but it no longer pained her. She set the tray down, smiling as Isabella ran into her arms. You came, the girl said, though Camilla had never left. Always, mi amor, she whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. The room hushed as Isabella leaned over her cake. Make a wish, Leonardo said softly. She closed her eyes, breathing in the warmth of the moment, then blew out the candles. The smoke curled upward like ghosts finally leaving their home. Everyone clapped, laughing, crying, all at once. Later, when the guests drifted away, Isabella tugged at Camilla's hand. Mama Cammy, she said seriously, do you remember when I asked if I was going to live? Camilla's heart tightened. Yes, I remember. Isabella smiled, her eyes bright. Now I know the answer. Camilla knelt. And what's that? That I'm living, Isabella whispered. Camilla pulled her close, tears glinting. Across the room, Leonardo lowered the camera, his chest tight with gratitude. The woman he once saw as a maid had become the heart of their world. And the child they'd nearly lost now embodied everything they'd learned: faith, courage, and love, without condition. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, they sat together in the quiet house. The laughter of the day lingered, soft and real. On a nearby shelf stood a simple wooden frame, holding a letter written in Camilla's graceful script. "If I don't wake up, tell her Mama said yes." The paper had faded, but its promise still glowed. Leonardo reached for the frame, tracing the words gently. "I used to think power meant control," he said. "Now I know it means letting love lead." Camila smiled. "Love doesn't need permission, Senor. It just happens." Outside, the sea shimmered in the orange light. Isabella pressed her face to the window. "Look, the first star." Camilla joined her, kneeling beside her. "Then make a wish, pequeña." Isabella thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't need to. I already got mine." Leonardo stepped behind them, resting his hands on their shoulders. The three of them stood together in silence, watching the sky darken. The house that once echoed with pain now glowed with peace. Camilla turned slightly, her voice low. "You know, miracles don't always look like light from heaven. Sometimes they look like this: a home, laughter, and a child who gets to grow up." Leonardo nodded, his throat tight. "And a woman brave enough to make it happen." The stars brightened above the sea, their reflection rippling across the glass. Inside, three silhouettes stood together, no longer strangers bound by tragedy, but a family created by choice. Real love, they had learned, doesn't need bloodlines or grand gestures. It simply endures. If this story touched your heart, share it. Leave a comment below about where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of love, hope, and second chances.